Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
The insistent ringing of my phone dragged me from a dream I couldn't quite hold on to. I squinted at the alarm clock on my nightstand. 7:15 a.m. Way too early for a Saturday, especially for me. My twin sister, Melanie, was the morning person, the one who greeted the dawn with a smile and a 5-mile run. I was the one who greeted it with a groan and a desperate fumbling for the snooze button. I rolled over, grabbing the phone from the charger. Melanie's face, bright and smiling, filled the screen. I answered, my voice thick with sleep. Mel, it's the crack of dawn on a weekend. This better be an emergency of epic proportions, like you've discovered a unicorn or a coffee shop that delivers. Her voice came through, but it was shaky, tight with a pain that sliced through my morning fog. Franklin, I'm at the ER. I sat bolt upright, my heart instantly pounding against my ribs. What happened? Are you okay? I'm not great, she said, her attempt at a light tone failing miserably. I was on my morning run. Some idiot wasn't looking and clipped me with their car. I'm okay. Mostly, just, I broke my leg. Frank, my left leg. Tibia and fibula. They said, it's a bad break. I was already out of bed, pulling on a pair of jeans from the floor. Which hospital? I'm on my way. St. Mary's. But listen, that's not why I'm calling. I mean, yes, I wanted you to know, but there's something else. Her voice dropped, laced with a desperation that scared me more than the news of the accident. My job. Frank. My new job at the Grandview Hotel. I start Monday. Head receptionist. It's the job I've been dreaming of since we were kids, playing hotel in the living room. I remembered. She was always the bubbly manager, greeting our stuffed animal guests with a flourish, while I was the quiet bellhop, happy to stay in the background. It was a dynamic that had pretty much defined our entire 23 years of existence. They won't fire you for breaking your leg, Mel. That's illegal. They won't fire me, she agreed. But they'll give the position to someone else. They need someone to start Monday. No exceptions. Patricia, the manager. She was very clear. I can't ask for a 6-week delay. I'll lose it. I know I will. She started to cry then. A raw, defeated sound that twisted my insides. I worked so hard for this. Okay, calm down, I said, my mind racing. We'll figure something out. Maybe you can talk to them. Explain the situation. There's nothing to explain, she sobbed. I can't stand behind a desk for 8 hours with a shattered leg. It's over. There was a pause, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, the same way they always did when she was about to propose something insane. Frank, she said, her voice suddenly focused, you have to do it. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. Do what? Call them for you. No, you have to be me. The silence that followed was so profound, I could hear the hum of my refrigerator from the kitchen. You want me to pretend to be you at your new job. Just for a few days, she pleaded, the words tumbling out in a rush. Just until I can figure something out with a cast and crutches. Please, Frank, we look exactly alike. Same eyes, same hair color, same stupid nose. It's the one good thing about being twins. No one can ever tell us apart if we don't want them to. Melanie, that is the single most insane idea you have ever had. And that includes the time you tried to build a raft out of milk jugs to sail down the river. I sank onto the edge of my bed, my head in my hands. I'm a guy who works from home as a data analyst and whose primary social interaction is with the pizza delivery guy. I can't be a receptionist at a fancy hotel. Yes, you can. You're smart. You're a quick learner. The hard part is the appearance. And we've got that covered. Covered, Mel. Have you looked at me lately? I have a jawline and stubble. And I'm pretty sure my voice is a few octaves lower than yours. We can fix that, she insisted. I have everything you need here at my apartment. My makeup, my clothes, my wigs. Please, Frank, just for 1 week. That's all I'm asking. 1 week to save my dream. Please. I've never asked you for anything this big before. That was true. Melanie was always the one taking care of things, the one who looked out for me, her quiet, introverted brother. She was the one who pushed me to apply for my first job, the one who helped me find my apartment. She had always been my rock. And now, her voice was cracking, filled with a despair I had never heard before. My own life was fine. It was stable. I worked from my quiet apartment, analyzed spreadsheets, and lived a life of comfortable, predictable solitude. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. What Melanie was suggesting was the polar opposite of safe. It was terrifying. It was impossible. But as I sat there, listening to my sister's muffled sobs, I knew I couldn't say no. I was her twin, her other half. Her desperation was my own. A heavy sigh escaped my lips. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Okay, Mel, I'll do it. The relief in her voice was a physical thing, a wave of gratitude that washed over the phone line. Oh, thank you. Frank, thank you. You won't regret this. My keys are under the mat. The uniform is in my closet. I'll text you everything you need to know. Call me when you get there. After we hung up, I stood in the middle of my living room for a full 10 minutes, a strange buzzing in my ears. What had I just agreed to? I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of the TV, a perfectly ordinary 23-year-old guy. Shy, unassuming Franklin. In 48 hours, I was supposed to transform that guy into Melanie, a confident, outgoing female receptionist. The thought was so absurd it was almost funny. Almost. The knot of pure, unadulterated fear in my stomach was very, very real. I spent the rest of the weekend in a daze of anxiety. Melanie, from her hospital bed, became my drill sergeant. We had a series of frantic video calls. She directed me to her apartment, a place so different from mine, filled with bright colors, scented candles, and an entire walk-in closet that looked like a boutique. Okay, first things first, she commanded from my phone screen, which I had propped up on her dresser. The uniform! It's the navy blue pencil skirt and the cream-colored silk blouse. Try it on. I stared at the clothes hanging pristinely in a garment bag. They looked so small, so delicate. With a deep breath, I stripped down to my boxers and began the ordeal. The silk blouse was soft against my skin, but it pulled tight across my shoulders and chest in a way that felt completely alien. The pencil skirt was even worse. I had to suck in my stomach just to get the zipper up, and it hugged my hips and thighs with an unforgiving grip. It was restrictive, confining. I couldn't imagine moving, let alone working, in this thing. It's a little snug, I said, looking at my reflection. It was a bizarre sight, my distinctly male upper body tapering down into a form-fitting skirt. It'll have to do, she said dismissively. Now, the real challenge, your face. She guided me through her makeup collection with the precision of a surgeon. Foundation first. Use the sponge and blend it into your neck. You have to hide your 5 o'clock shadow. This is non-negotiable. The cold. Liquid foundation felt like a mask on my skin. I spent 20 minutes trying to blend it properly, my movements clumsy and unsure. Next came concealer, powder, a light touch of blush on the apples of my cheeks. Smile. Not like that. A real smile. Then the eyes. Eyeliner is tricky, she warned. Just a thin line, right above your lashes. It'll make your eyes look bigger. My hand shook as I brought the tiny, sharp pencil towards my eye. I poked myself twice before managing a wobbly, crooked line. Mascara was another battle, a dance of blinking and smudging until my lashes were coated in a clumpy black film. Finally, the lipstick, a neutral, rosy shade. The waxy feel of it on my lips was a completely foreign sensation. When I was done, I stared at the stranger in the mirror. It was my face, but it wasn't. The sharp angles were softened. My eyes seemed wider, my lips fuller. The stubble was mostly hidden beneath the layers of makeup. It was unsettling. I didn't look like Melanie. I looked like Franklin wearing a mask of Melanie. "Good enough for a first try," she declared. "But we need to do something about your hair." She directed me to a box on the top shelf of her closet. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, were several styrofoam heads, each adorned with a wig. The one on the right, it's the same style I had when I interviewed. The wig was a beautiful chestnut brown, cut into a sleek professional bob that grazed the jawline. It felt heavy and itchy as I settled it over my own short hair. But the effect was instantaneous and startling. With my hair hidden, the illusion was much more complete. The person in the mirror was no longer just a man in makeup. It was someone else. Someone unnervingly close to my sister. The final, and most dreaded, trial was the shoes. They were a pair of modest, navy blue pumps with a 2-inch heel. 2 inches might as well have been 2 feet. The moment I slid my feet into them and stood up, my ankles wobbled like a newborn foal. I took a tentative step and nearly pitched forward into the dresser. The shoes forced my weight onto the balls of my feet, pinching my toes and straining my calves. "You have to practice," Melanie insisted. "Walk around the apartment. Get used to them. It's all about balance and don't clump. Think gliding." I spent the next hour gliding around her apartment, my every step a clunky, awkward testament to my failure. I stumbled. I wobbled. I clung to furniture for support. It was torture. How did women do this every single day? The last lesson was my voice. "You can't talk in your normal voice. Frank, it's too deep. You need to pitch it up. Just a little. Speak from your head, not your chest. And soften your words. Don't be so blunt." We practiced phrases. "Welcome to the Grandview Hotel. How may I help you?" "Certainly, I can assist you with that." "Enjoy your stay with us." I repeated them over and over, trying to mimic her lighter, more melodic tone. It felt fake, ridiculous. I sounded like I was doing a bad impression. By the time Monday morning arrived, I was a nervous wreck. I had barely slept. My mind filled with 1,000 catastrophic what-if scenarios. What if someone recognized me? What if I fell flat on my face? What if I forgot and answered someone in my normal voice? I went through the transformation process again, this time with a grim sense of purpose. The makeup went on a little smoother. The uniform felt just as constricting. I strapped on a pair of padded briefs and a tight compression shirt I'd bought in a panic, trying to soften my masculine frame and create the illusion of a more feminine silhouette. The difference was subtle, but it made the clothes fit a little better, hang a little more naturally. It also made me feel even more like a fraud. Finally, the wig and the dreaded heels. I took one last look in the full-length mirror. The person staring back was a strange hybrid, a creation of makeup, fabric, and hair. It was Melanie. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. This was it. There was no backing out now. The drive to the hotel was the longest 15 minutes of my life. I parked in the employee lot, my hands slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I sat there for a moment, just breathing. "You can do this," I told myself, repeating it like a mantra. It's for Melanie. Just a few days. Taking a deep, shuddering breath. I got out of the car. The short walk from the parking lot to the employee entrance was a gauntlet of imagined scrutiny. Every rustle of my skirt, every click of my heels on the pavement, felt like a spotlight announcing my deception. I kept my head down, my eyes fixed on the ground, and walked as smoothly as I possibly could. I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the opulent lobby of the Grand View Hotel. It was all marble floors, soaring ceilings, and the quiet, dignified hum of wealth. A massive crystal chandelier hung in the center, casting a glittering light over everything. It was beautiful and intimidating. And standing behind the long, polished check-in desk was a formidable-looking woman in a sharp grey suit, with her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked up as I approached, her eyes sharp and appraising. "You must be Melanie," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "I'm Patricia, the hotel manager. You're 5 minutes early. I like that." I felt my throat go dry. I tried to summon Melanie's bright, confident smile. The result felt more like a pained grimace. I pitched my voice up, praying it didn't crack. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Patricia," I managed to squeak out. She gave me a curt nod and gestured to the desk. "Welcome to the Grand View. Let's get you started." My first day as a female receptionist had begun, and all I wanted to do was run away. The first few hours were a blur of overwhelming information and sheer terror. Patricia was a whirlwind of efficiency, showing me the complex computer system, the multi-line phone, and the thick binder of hotel policies and procedures. My brain, usually so good with data and systems, felt like a sponge that had been instantly saturated. I nodded and smiled, trying to look competent, while inside I was screaming. My every movement felt clumsy and exaggerated. When I reached for a pen, I knocked over a cup of water, sending a small flood across the polished granite countertop. My cheeks burned with shame as I stammered out apologies, mopping it up with a handful of tissues. Patricia just raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow and said, "We keep the tissues for the guests. Melanie, use a cloth." My smile was a stiff, unnatural thing I had to consciously hold in place. It felt like it was going to crack my face in two. The heels were an instrument of torture, sending sharp pains shooting up my legs with every step. I tried to stand as Melanie had instructed, with my weight evenly distributed, but I kept shifting and wobbling, feeling like a complete imposter. Patricia's instructions were a constant stream. "Melanie, your posture. Stand up straight. Shoulders back. You are the first impression of this hotel. Melanie. Answer the phone with a smile in your voice. They can hear it. Melanie. Anticipate the guest's needs. Don't wait to be asked." I was so focused on not tripping, on keeping my voice in that higher register, on remembering to say she when referring to myself in the third person for a reservation, that the actual tasks of the job felt secondary. A guest asked me for directions to the nearest art museum, and I just stared at him blankly for a solid 10 seconds before my brain kicked in. I fumbled with the keycard machine, accidentally deactivating a guest's card twice before finally getting it right. The worst part was the constant, low-grade fear of being discovered. Every time a guest looked at me for a second too long, my heart would leap into my throat. Was it my hands? Were they too big? Was my makeup smudged? Was that a hint of stubble peeking through? I became hyper-aware of every masculine trait I possessed, convinced they were all broadcasting my secret to the world. A businessman with a booming voice leaned conspiratorially over the counter. "Tough first day." "Huh?" he asked, a knowing glint in his eye. I froze, convinced he knew. I'm sorry." "Don't worry, you'll get the hang of it," he chuckled, My daughter just started her first job. Had the same deer in the headlights look you've got. He winked and walked away, leaving me weak with a mixture of relief and renewed anxiety. Lunch was a lonely affair in the employee break room. I sat in a corner, picking at a sandwich I'd bought from the hotel cafe, too nervous to eat. I couldn't risk talking to anyone, couldn't risk letting my guard down for a single second. I just kept my head down, scrolled through my phone, and counted the minutes until I could go back to the relative anonymity of the front desk. But as the afternoon wore on, something strange began to happen. Under Patricia's relentless but fair guidance, a tiny part of the fog in my brain began to clear. I successfully checked in a family of 4, remembering to offer the children coloring books from a drawer under the desk. Their mother gave me a genuinely warm smile. "Thank you, Melanie, that's so thoughtful." The words, and the smile, sent a small, unexpected thrill through me. I had done something right. I had made someone's experience a little bit better. Later, an elderly woman came to the desk in a panic. She had lost an earring, a family heirloom, somewhere in the lobby. She was on the verge of tears. I remembered what Patricia had said about anticipating needs, instead of just telling her I'd have housekeeping look for it. I came out from behind the desk. "Let me help you look," I said, my voice softer and more genuine than it had been all day. "Where were you sitting?" We spent 10 minutes searching, my eyes scanning the thick carpet. The heels were murder as I crouched down to look under armchairs, but I ignored the pain. Finally, I saw a tiny glint of gold near the leg of a coffee table. "Is this it?" I asked, holding it up. The woman's face crumpled with relief. She took the earring from my hand and then, to my complete surprise, she took my hands in hers. "Oh, you wonderful, wonderful girl," she said, her eyes shining. "Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me." "It was no trouble at all," I mumbled, feeling a blush rise under my foundation. As she walked away, I returned to my post behind the desk, a strange warmth spreading through my chest. "Girl." She had called me a girl. It was part of the disguise. I knew that, but hearing it, in that moment of genuine gratitude, didn't feel like a lie. It felt nice. It felt right in a way I couldn't explain. For the rest of the day, I held on to that feeling. The job was still terrifying. The shoes were still agonizing. But it wasn't impossible anymore. When my shift finally ended, I practically limped to my car, my entire body aching with a strange mix of physical pain and emotional exhaustion. I drove to Melanie's apartment, kicked off the heels with a groan of pure ecstasy, and collapsed onto her sofa. I called her, and the whole story of the day came pouring out of me: the spilled water, the key cards, the lost earring, Patricia's eagle eye. "You did it!" "Frank," she said, and I could hear the pride in her voice. "I knew you could. You just have to find your rhythm." Find my rhythm. It sounded so simple, but as I lay there, my feet throbbing and my face feeling stiff with makeup, I felt like I was trying to learn a whole new dance in a body that wasn't my own. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the old woman's grateful smile and her words. "You wonderful, wonderful girl." It was just a performance, I told myself. It had to be, but a tiny, quiet part of me wondered if it was more than that. The next few days settled into a strange new routine. Each morning, I'd wake up in Melanie's apartment, the flowery scent of her laundry detergent, a stark contrast to my own unscented, utilitarian world. The process of becoming Melanie became less of an ordeal and more of a ritual. I got faster with the makeup, my hand steadier with the eyeliner. I learned how to apply it to create a look that was professional yet soft, a look that made my eyes seem kinder. I discovered that a certain shade of lipstick made my thin lips look fuller, and, dare I say it, more pleasant. The uniform started to feel less like a costume. I got used to the feel of the silk blouse against my skin, the way the pencil skirt restricted my stride, forcing me into smaller, more deliberate steps. The padded undergarments, which had initially felt so humiliating, became a part of the daily armor. They smoothed my silhouette, helping the clothes hang correctly. And with each passing day, I became less aware of them. They were simply part of the foundation of being Melanie. The heels were still a challenge, but I was learning. I discovered the secret was in my core, in holding myself upright and balanced. I learned to walk with a smoother gait. The clunky, hesitant steps of the first day replaced by a more confident click-clack on the marble floor. Patricia even commented on it. Much better posture, Melanie, she noted with a crisp nod. You carry yourself with more authority. That small praise felt like winning a marathon. The job itself was becoming second nature. I memorized the layout of the hotel, the names of the regular guests, the best restaurants to recommend for any occasion. I learned to navigate the complex booking software with ease, to handle multiple phone calls with unflappable calm, and to smooth over the ruffled feathers of a guest whose room wasn't ready on time. I was discovering a part of myself I never knew existed. As Franklin, I was quiet and withdrawn. I avoided eye contact. I mumbled. But as Melanie, I was different. I had to be. I looked people in the eye and smiled. I engaged in small talk with guests, asking them about their travels, their plans for the day. I found myself offering a cup of coffee to a weary traveler checking in late at night, or a lollipop to a restless child in the lobby. These small acts of kindness came surprisingly naturally. It was in these moments that I felt the most profound shift. When a guest would say, "Thank you, miss," or a colleague would call out, "Great job today, Melanie." It began to feel less like they were talking to a character and more like they were talking to me. The pronouns, she and her, which had been so jarring at first, started to land differently. One afternoon, a young couple was checking out, gushing about their wonderful stay. "We just wanted to tell your manager how fantastic your receptionist has been," the woman said to Patricia, who was standing nearby. "She has been so incredibly helpful and charming. Her recommendations were perfect." Patricia smiled. "I agree. Melanie is a wonderful asset to our team." Hearing them talk about her, about Melanie, while I was standing right there, was a surreal out-of-body experience. They were talking about my actions, my words, my choices. They were praising me, but they were praising a version of me that I had never allowed to exist before. This person they saw, this charming, helpful, graceful woman was a person I was starting to genuinely like. The warmth of their praise seeped into my skin. A feeling of validation that Franklin, the quiet data analyst, had never experienced. It was addictive. I started to enjoy the little details of my new life. I enjoyed the scent of the perfume I spritzed on each morning, a light floral scent that Melanie loved. I found a strange satisfaction in making sure my hair my wig was perfectly styled, that there wasn't a single chip in my nail polish. These were things Franklin would have never cared about, but for the person I was at the hotel, they felt important. They were part of the complete picture of competence and grace I was trying to project. My relationship with my colleagues also began to evolve. In the beginning, I was distant, terrified of slipping up. But it was hard to maintain that wall. Maria, the other lead receptionist who worked the evening shift, was bubbly and kind. She'd often overlap with me for a few minutes and chat about her kids or a funny TV show she was watching. "I love that blouse on you, Melanie," she said one day. "That color really makes your eyes pop." "Oh, thank you," I replied, my voice naturally falling into the softer, higher register without conscious thought. And for the first time, The compliment landed without a sense of fraudulent panic. I just felt pleased. After a few weeks, Melanie called with an update. Good news and bad news, she said from her physical therapy session. I could hear the sounds of equipment and other people in the background. Give me the good news first, I said, leaning against the counter of her kitchen, making myself a cup of tea. The good news is the doctor says my leg is healing perfectly. No complications. That's great, Mel, so you'll be back soon. There was a pause. Well, that's the bad news. Healing perfectly for a break this bad means another 6 to 8 weeks before I can even think about being on my feet for a full day. And then there's the rehab. Her voice trailed off. Frank, I'm going to need you to stay on. Maybe for another 2 months. I'm so sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, a storm of emotions brewing inside me. I should have been horrified. I should have been counting the days until I could go back to my quiet. Simple life as Franklin. 2 more months of this charade, of the painful shoes and the early mornings and the constant fear of being discovered. It was an insane request. But the emotion that rose most strongly in my chest wasn't dread. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was a profound, undeniable, and deeply confusing sense of relief. My heart didn't sink at the thought of continuing. It clenched with a strange, possessive pang at the thought of having to stop. The idea of hanging up the uniform, of washing off the makeup for the last time, of going back to being just Franklin, felt like a loss. It felt like packing away a vibrant, essential part of myself that I had only just discovered. Who was I becoming? This person who smiled at strangers, who took pride in her appearance, who felt a quiet joy in helping others. She didn't feel like a character anymore. She felt more real to me than the man who spent his days staring at spreadsheets in a silent apartment. Frank, are you there? Melanie's voice was laced with worry. I understand if it's too much. I can just call Patricia and tell her the truth. I'll lose the job, but it's not fair to ask this of you. No, I said, the word coming out quicker and more firmly than I intended. No, it's fine, I can do it. Don't worry about the job. Mel, I've got it covered. As I hung up the phone, I walked into Melanie's bedroom and stood in front of the full-length mirror. I was still in my uniform from the day, the navy skirt and cream blouse. My makeup was a little faded after 8 hours, but the illusion was still there. I looked at the reflection, really looked. I saw the soft curve of the wig, the gentle arch of my penciled eyebrows, the subtle blush on my cheeks. I saw the way the blouse draped over the soft forms I created each morning, the way the skirt accentuated a waist I didn't know I had. I saw a pair of kind, intelligent eyes staring back at me. And for the first time, I didn't see Franklin in a costume. I didn't see a man pretending to be a woman. I saw a woman, a confident, capable, gentle woman. And as I looked into her eyes, a breathtaking, terrifying realization washed over me. This wasn't a disguise. This wasn't an act. The person in the mirror wasn't Melanie, but she wasn't Franklin either. She was me. The person I had been pretending to be for the last few weeks felt more authentic than the person I had been for the last 23 years. The ease I felt in these clothes, the rightness of being called she, the quiet confidence I had found it wasn't a performance, it was an awakening. My life as Franklin had been lived in grayscale, a safe, muted existence in the shadows. But my life as this new person was in vibrant, stunning color. It was terrifying and challenging. Yes, but it was also filled with connection, with purpose, with a sense of rightness that resonated deep in my soul. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the reflection. They weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of recognition, of a profound and earth-shattering homecoming. The knot in my stomach wasn't anxiety anymore. It was the fluttering of 1,000 butterflies, finally being set free. The charade was over, not because I was going to quit, but because it was no longer a charade. This was who I was. I needed to tell Melanie, not just about the job, but about everything. The visit to the rehabilitation center was nerve-wracking. I dressed with more care than ever before, choosing not the uniform, but one of Melanie's casual outfits, a soft cashmere sweater, a flowing A-line skirt, and a pair of comfortable flats. I did my makeup meticulously, styled the wig, and for the first time, when I left the apartment, I wasn't playing a role. I was simply being myself. I found Melanie in the physical therapy room, grimacing as she worked with a therapist to put weight on her injured leg. She broke into a huge smile when she saw me. "Frank, or should I say, Melanie," she joked, hobbling over on her crutches. She gave me a one-armed hug. "Wow, you look amazing! I swear, you're better at being me than I am." We found a quiet corner in the hospital's small garden. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling in my lap. "Mel, we need to talk. It's not about the job." Her smile faded, replaced by a look of concern. "What is it? Is everything okay?" I struggled to find the words, my carefully rehearsed speech vanishing from my mind. So I just spoke from the heart. "When you first asked me to do this," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "It was the scariest thing I had ever done. I felt like a fraud, like I was playing a ridiculous character in a play that was bound to end in disaster." I looked up and met her eyes. But then something happened. Day by day, it started to feel less like an act. Being called Melanie, being treated as a woman, it didn't feel wrong. It started to feel right. All those years. Mel. I felt like I was in the background, like I was just a shadow. But as Melanie, I feel present. I feel seen. I feel like myself for the first time in my entire life. Tears streamed down my face now, and I didn't bother to wipe them away. I looked in the mirror the other night, after you called, and I didn't see Franklin anymore. I saw me, the real me, Mel. I think I'm a woman. The words hung in the air between us. Melanie stared at me, her expression unreadable. I saw a flicker of confusion, then shock, then something else, something softer. She reached out and placed her hand over mine. Her grip was warm and firm. She was quiet for a long time, and my heart pounded with the fear of rejection. What if she thought I was a freak? What if this was too much? Too weird? Finally, she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "All our lives, Franklin," she said softly, using my old name for what felt like the last time. "I've been the loud one, the one in the spotlight, and you've always been right there, supporting me, letting me shine. I never stopped to think about whether you were happy in the shadows." She squeezed my hand. "I don't understand everything you're feeling right now, but I don't need to. I know you. I know your heart. And if living this way, as the person you've shown me today, if that's what makes you feel whole, if you're happy being yourself, then I fully support you. 100%. A sob of pure relief escaped me. Her acceptance was everything. It was the foundation I needed to build this new life. She leaned forward and wrapped her arms around me in a fierce, loving hug. It wasn't Melanie hugging Franklin anymore. It was a sister embracing her sister. "So," she said, pulling back with a watery smile, "if you're not Franklin, and you're not me, who are you?" The question felt momentous, the answer even more so. I had thought about it all night. It had come to me in a flash of perfect clarity, a name that honored the past but embraced the future. Francine, I said, the name feeling solid and real on my tongue. My name is Francine. Melanie's smile was radiant. Francine, she repeated. I love it. It's beautiful. She looked at me, her sister, with eyes full of love and acceptance. It's so good to finally meet you. Francine. Walking out of that hospital was like walking into a new world. The sky seemed brighter, the air fresher. I wasn't Franklin, the man who was afraid of his own shadow. I was Francine, a woman who was finally ready to step into the light. My return to the Grandview Hotel the next day was different. The uniform felt the same. The makeup was applied with the same care. But the person wearing them was transformed. The last vestiges of Franklin's fear and hesitation had been washed away, replaced by Francine's quiet, burgeoning confidence. I was no longer an actor playing a part. I was simply myself, living my life, doing my job. The change was subtle, but people noticed. My smiles were no longer practiced. They came from a place of genuine contentment. My interactions with guests were infused with a new warmth and empathy. I moved with a grace that wasn't learned from mimicking Melanie, but flowed from my own sense of self-assurance. You seem different, Melanie, Maria commented during our shift change one evening. Happier. There's a glow about you. I'm just feeling really settled in here, I replied, and it was the truest thing I had ever said. I thrived in my role. I loved the structure of the day, the challenge of solving problems, the simple satisfaction of making a guest's stay more pleasant. The hotel became my sanctuary, the first place in the world where I felt completely and utterly myself. My bond with Melanie, now that she knew my truth, became stronger than ever. We talked every day, her being my biggest cheerleader as I navigated my new identity. About 3 months after my journey as Francine began, Patricia called me into her office. My heart did a familiar, nervous flutter. A ghost of Franklin's old anxiety. Her office was immaculate, organized with the same precision she ran the hotel. Close the door, Melanie, she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. I sat down, smoothing my skirt over my knees. I've been watching you for the past few months, she began, her gaze direct and intense. When you started, you were timid, uncertain, but you have blossomed into one of the most capable, professional, and genuinely hospitable employees I have ever had the pleasure of managing. You anticipate needs before they arise. You handle difficult situations with grace, and you have an impeccable work ethic. She paused, and I held my breath. The position of assistant hotel manager is opening up at the end of the month. I want you to have it. The air left my lungs in a rush. Assistant manager. It was a huge step up. A real career move. It was everything Melanie had dreamed of. And now it was being offered to me. To Francine. A wave of elation washed over me, followed immediately by a cold wave of dread. I couldn't accept it. Not like this. I couldn't build my future on a foundation of lies, no matter how real it felt. If I was going to take this step, I had to do it as Francine, not as a woman named Melanie who didn't even exist here. My hands trembled. This was the moment my new fragile world could come crashing down around me. Patricia, I started, my voice shaking slightly. I am so incredibly honored, more than you know. But before I can even consider accepting, there's something I have to tell you. My name isn't Melanie. I saw a flicker of confusion in her eyes. I took a deep breath and told her everything. I started with the phone call from Melanie in the emergency room. The desperate plan we had concocted. I told her about my first terrifying days, about the awkwardness and the fear. And then I told her about the transformation, about the shocking realization that the role I was playing was more real than the life I had left behind. I told her about Franklin and about becoming Francine. I laid my entire unbelievable story out for her, my voice growing steadier as I spoke my truth. I ended by telling her about my legal name change, the paperwork for which was already in process. When I finished, a heavy silence filled the office. I kept my eyes on her face, bracing myself for the inevitable termination, for the anger, the disgust. Patricia leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. She steepled her fingers, her sharp eyes studying me. It felt like an eternity. Finally, a small, slow smile spread across her face. "Francine," she said, testing the name. She nodded to herself. "I had my suspicions." I gaped at her. You knew." "I didn't know the details." She clarified. "But I knew something was amiss. On your first day, your hands, your jawline, they were a bit incongruous. And I run a thorough background check on all my management candidates. The social security number you provided belongs to Melanie, but the person I've been observing, the person who has earned this promotion, her spirit is entirely her own. I've been waiting for you to tell me." Relief washed over me so powerfully I felt dizzy. She leaned forward, her expression softening. "I hired Melanie for her potential, but I am offering this promotion to you, Francine, for your proven performance. You said you felt like you were acting at first. Well, let me tell you something. No one can act that kind of dedication. No one can fake that level of genuine care for our guests. You do this job with your whole heart." She paused, her smile widening. "The important thing is that you always work with your whole heart. I don't care what name is on your birth certificate. I care about the person who shows up here every day and makes my hotel a better place. Is that person Francine?" Tears of gratitude streamed down my cheeks. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, it is." "Good," she said, her voice all business again. "Now, about that promotion." 6 months later. I wasn't just the assistant manager. I was thriving. I had moved out of Melanie's apartment and into my own, a space I decorated myself with soft colors and comfortable furniture. The legal name and gender marker change on my official documents was complete. Seeing Francine on my new driver's license was one of the proudest moments of my life. Melanie, fully recovered and walking without a limp, had found a wonderful job at a competing hotel across town. We were no longer just twins. We were sisters in the truest sense. Our bond forged in the crucible of my transformation. She was my biggest champion. My life was full and happy in a way I had never thought possible. But the most meaningful moment came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. A family was checking in, their teenage son trailing behind them. His shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on the floor. He wore a baggy hoodie, his long hair hiding his face. I could feel the tension and sadness radiating off him. While I was processing his parents' check-in, I noticed him looking at a brochure for a local LGBTQ+ youth center that I had insisted we keep at the front desk. As I handed his parents their keycards, I leaned forward slightly and spoke to the boy in a quiet voice. "It's a really great place," I said, nodding towards the brochure. "Very welcoming." He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw his face. His eyes were filled with a familiar fear and a desperate longing for understanding. He was a transgender boy. I was almost certain of it. He saw me, truly saw me. A confident woman in a position of authority, and a flicker of hope crossed his face. "Is it?" he asked, his voice barely audible. I gave him the warmest, most genuine smile I possessed. "I know it can be scary," I said softly, so his parents couldn't hear. "But finding the courage to be who you really are is the most wonderful journey you will ever take. Believe me." He held my gaze for a long moment, and in his eyes, I saw my own reflection, the scared, uncertain person I had been less than a year ago. A slow, shy smile touched his lips. "Thank you," he whispered. "Ah." As his family walked towards the elevators, he looked back over his shoulder and gave me a small wave. I waved back, my heart swelling with an emotion so profound it almost brought me to tears. The accident that had broken my sister's leg had felt like a tragedy, but it had been a strange and beautiful gift. It had shattered the life of Franklin, the man who was too afraid to live, and in its place, allowed Francine to be born. It had opened a door I never knew existed, leading me not just to a new job, but to my true self. And now, I could use my story, my journey, to hold that door open for others. Standing behind the grand desk of the hotel, I was no longer in the background. I was finally home. Life as Francine had found its own rhythm, a steady, comforting beat that was entirely my own. The title of assistant manager wasn't just a nameplate on my desk, it was a role I inhabited with a pride that warmed me from the inside out. My days were a whirlwind of managing staff schedules, liaising with the events department, and smoothing over the inevitable hiccups that came with running a luxury hotel. I no longer felt the need to project competence. It was simply a part of who I was. Patricia became less of a manager and more of a mentor. Our meetings often straying from occupancy rates to conversations about life and leadership. She treated me with a straightforward respect that validated my identity more than any grand gesture could have. My world outside the hotel was also taking shape. My apartment was my sanctuary, a place that reflected my own tastes entirely. I had discovered a love for gardening, and my balcony was a riot of colorful flowers and fragrant herbs. I had found a small welcoming book club where I was known only as Francine, a woman with a penchant for historical fiction and a surprisingly sharp analytical mind, a remnant of Franklin I had learned to embrace. My relationship with Melanie was the steady anchor in my life. We had dinner every Thursday, our conversations an easy mix of work gossip, dating woes mostly hers, and the simple, comfortable chatter of sisters who knew each other better than anyone else in the world. There was a new fixture in my daily routine at the hotel, Mr. Alistair Hayes. He was a writer who had checked into one of the long-stay suites for 3 months to finish a novel. He was a quiet, observant man in his late 20s, with kind, thoughtful eyes and a way of smiling that was slow and genuine. He would come down to the lobby for coffee every morning, and we fell into an easy pattern of conversation. "Another battle with the blank page. Mr. Hayes," I'd ask as I passed him in the lobby cafe. "Please, call me Alex." He'd insist for the 10th time. And yes, my main character is being stubbornly uncooperative today. I think he's more terrified of his future than I am. He'd look at me over the rim of his mug. "And how is the grand view today?" "Francine. Any dramatic plot twists?" "Just the usual," I'd laugh. "A minor crisis with the pastry chef. A VIP demanding a very specific brand of bottled water. The usual stuff of great literature." Our conversations were brief, but they became a highlight of my day. Unlike the guests who saw me as a function, a problem solver, Alex saw me as a person. He'd ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. He noticed when I changed the floral arrangements on the front desk. He remembered I had mentioned my love for old black and white movies and recommended one he thought I'd like. A part of me, a part that was still learning to trust its own happiness, was terrified of the gentle pull I felt towards him. Romance was a frontier I had yet to explore as Francine. The idea was both exhilarating and petrifying. How could I navigate the complexities of dating when my own history was so complex? When would I tell him? How would I tell him? The thought of seeing his kind eyes fill with confusion, or, worse, revulsion, was enough to make me want to retreat back into the safe, professional shell I had built. One afternoon, he found me on the hotel's rooftop terrace, taking a rare 5-minute break to enjoy the sunshine. Hiding from another pastry crisis, he asked, leaning against the railing beside me. Something like that. I sighed. Just needed a moment of quiet. We stood in comfortable silence for a minute, watching the city buzz below. I finished the chapter that was giving me so much trouble. He said suddenly, "My character finally made a brave decision. He decided to stop running from who he is and just be that person, even if it scared him." He turned to look at me. I was thinking about our conversations when I wrote it. You have this calm, this sense of being exactly where you're supposed to be. It's inspiring. My breath caught in my throat. His words were so simple, so sincere, and they saw me so clearly. Thank you. Alex, that means a lot. I was wondering, he said, his gaze steady, if you would be willing to have dinner with me sometime, outside of the hotel. I'd love to hear your story, not just the story of the assistant manager. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the precipice. I'd like that very much, I heard myself say. A braver version of me taking the lead. A date. I had a date. The thought sent a jolt of pure, unadulterated joy through me, quickly followed by a tidal wave of anxiety. The universe, it seems, has a twisted sense of timing. A week later, 2 days before my scheduled dinner with Alex, a convention of regional sales managers descended upon the hotel. The lobby was a chaotic sea of identical grey suits and booming, overconfident voices. I was in the thick of it, directing bellhops and sorting out a room mix-up, when a voice cut through the din. Franklin Miller, is that you?" The name hit me like a physical blow. It was a name from another lifetime, a ghost I thought I had left behind. I froze, my back to the voice, my blood turning to ice. I slowly turned, my professional smile feeling like a cheap plastic mask. Standing in front of me was Mark Renshaw. He had been 2 years ahead of me in college, a loud, obnoxious business major who had been on the wrestling team. He was the kind of guy who called everyone buddy and seemed to think my quiet nature was a personal insult to him. He was heavier now, his face puffier, but the same arrogant smirk was firmly in place. His eyes raked over me. From my styled wig and makeup, down to my tailored dress and heels, a slow, deeply unpleasant look of dawning comprehension spread across his face. "Whoa," he said, his voice dripping with a mixture of shock and mockery. "What in the hell happened to you? Miller lose a bet or something?" A small circle of silence formed around us as his colleagues turned to look. My face burned with humiliation. The old Franklin inside me wanted to shrink, to disappear, to run and hide. My hands started to tremble, and for a terrifying second, I couldn't find my voice. But then, I looked past him and saw my reflection in the polished brass of the elevator doors. I saw Francine. I saw the assistant manager of the Grand View Hotel. I saw the woman who had faced down her deepest fears and built a new life from scratch. I saw the woman Patricia respected and the woman Alex wanted to have dinner with. Franklin would have run. Francine stood her ground. I took a deep breath, the air steadying me. I straightened my spine, lifted my chin, and met his gaze with a look of cool, professional indifference. "I'm afraid you've mistaken me for someone else," I said, my voice perfectly level, without a hint of the higher pitch I had once had to force. It was just my voice now. "My name is Francine. I'm the assistant manager here. Is there something I can help you with?" Mark was taken aback by my composure. He blinked, his smirk faltering. "No, I know you. You're Frank Miller. We had econ together with Professor Albright. Don't try to tell me you're not him." His voice was loud, accusatory. He was trying to create a scene, to bully me into submission. "Sir," I said, my tone becoming firm, authoritative, If you are a guest at this hotel, I am happy to assist you with any legitimate needs you may have. If you are here to harass my staff or me, I will have to ask you to leave. From the corner of my eye, I saw two of the hotel security guards begin to move discreetly in our direction. My staff was loyal. They had my back. Mark looked from me to the approaching security, a flush creeping up his neck. He had expected me to crumble, to be an easy target for his ridicule. He didn't know what to do with a woman who refused to be intimidated. He let out a short, contemptuous laugh. "Whatever, you're a freak. Miller!" He turned and strode away, swallowed up by the crowd of grey suits. I stood there for a moment, my heart still racing, but my hands were steady. I took another deep breath and turned back to my staff, who were all watching me with concern. "All right, everyone," I said, my voice calm and clear. "Let's get back to it. We have a lot of guests to check in." I had not crumbled. I had not hidden. I had faced the past, a particularly ugly part of it, and I had won. I hadn't won by fighting or yelling, but by simply and unshakably being myself. The feeling was more empowering than I could have ever imagined. Later that evening, after the last of the convention guests had been settled, I was in my office, trying to focus on a spreadsheet, when there was a soft knock on the door. It was Alex. "I saw what happened in the lobby earlier," he said, his expression gentle. "I was over by the cafe. Are you okay?" I managed a small, tired smile. "I'm okay, just an unwelcome ghost from a past life." "He seemed to know you," Alex said carefully, or thought he did. This was it, a different kind of precipice. I had planned to tell him at dinner, in a quiet, controlled environment. But the universe had other plans. Hiding felt wrong, cowardly. It felt like something Franklin would do. "Sit down, Alex," I said, gesturing to the chair. He sat, his gaze never leaving my face. And just as I had with Patricia, I told him everything. I didn't spare the details. I told him about Franklin, the quiet, invisible boy. I told him about Melanie's accident, the ridiculous plan, the first terrifying days in heels and makeup. I told him about the slow, shocking, wonderful discovery of my true self. I told him my birth name. I laid my entire soul bare for him. I finished, my heart in my throat, bracing for the impact of his reaction. He was silent for a long time, his expression thoughtful. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and looked at me with an intensity that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. "Thank you for telling me that, Francine," he said, his voice soft. "That must have been incredibly difficult." He reached out and, very gently, placed his hand over mine on the desk. His touch was warm and steady. The man he was talking to, Franklin, he sounds like he was a very good brother. What he did for his sister was extraordinary. He paused, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. "But the person I've been getting to know, the person I asked to dinner, is Francine, the smart, graceful, kind woman who runs this hotel with a quiet confidence that I find completely captivating. That's who I want to have dinner with." A slow smile spread across his face. "So, is Friday at 8 still good for you?" Tears I didn't know I was holding back spilled over, tracing paths through my makeup. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a happiness so profound it ached. I nodded, unable to speak. All I could do was squeeze his hand, anchoring myself to this incredible, accepting man. The confrontation with Mark had shaken me, but in a strange way, it had been a gift. It had forced me to stand up for Francine in a way I never had before. And Alex's reaction had shown me that my past wasn't a liability to be hidden, but simply a part of the story that had led me to become the woman I was today. My newfound confidence propelled me to follow through on another promise I had made to myself. I contacted the LGBTQ+ Youth Center, whose brochure I kept at the desk. I told the director a condensed version of my story and volunteered to be a mentor. The following week, I walked into the center for the first time. The space was bright and chaotic, filled with teenagers laughing, painting, and just being themselves in a place where they were safe. And sitting on a couch in the corner, looking much less lost than he had in the hotel lobby, was the boy I had spoken to. His face lit up when he saw me. "You're here," he said, a real smile on his face. "I told you it was a great place," I said, sitting down next to him. "I'm Francine." "I'm Leo," he replied. We talked for over an hour. He told me about his struggles at school, his parents' difficulty with using his correct name and pronouns, his dreams of becoming a graphic novelist. And I listened. I didn't offer easy answers, but I offered something more important: understanding. I told him it gets better. I told him that the journey is hard, but finding yourself is worth every difficult step. I was no longer just a symbol of hope he saw across a hotel lobby. I was a real person, sitting with him, telling him he wasn't alone. My date with Alex was everything I had hoped it would be, and more. We went to a small Italian restaurant, tucked away on a quiet side street. There were no secrets between us, no fear of saying the wrong thing. We talked for hours, about his book and my job, about our families and our dreams. He was funny and brilliant and saw the world in a way that fascinated me. For the first time in my life, I was on a date and felt completely, utterly myself. At the end of the night, he walked me to the door of my apartment. "I haven't had a night like this in a very long time. Francine," he said, his eyes soft in the dim hallway light. "Me neither," I admitted. "Actually, me ever." He smiled and gently cupped my cheek, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through me. He leaned in and gave me a soft, tentative kiss. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style kiss. It was quiet and gentle and respectful. It was perfect. It was a promise of a beginning. As I closed my apartment door behind me, I leaned against it, a dizzying smile on my face. A year ago, I had been Franklin, living a life in the shadows, a life that wasn't my own. Now, I was Francine. I was a respected professional, a loving sister, a trusted mentor, and a woman who had just been kissed by a wonderful man who saw and valued her for exactly who she was. The journey had started with an accident, a lie born of desperation. But it had led me to a life of truth, a life more vibrant and full of love than I had ever dared to imagine. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready to write the next chapter myself,